like so. Just a little loop, and then put your swivel on. Take the tag end back through, and then pull it down tight, so your knot's down tight, and then literally just do 2 turns round the length, and then back through the loop that's left. As you can see, there's a little loop there, and then put that back through, and then just pull it down, wet it down. And what I normally do is put this on here just so you don't end up damaging the loop. Put that on the end of there, pull that down real tight, and you've got a lovely little loop knot. And as you can see, that's a perfect loop. There's no, the hook link's not going off in different angles. All you're going to do is chop that off, and then you've got the perfect. I mean, what I normally do would steam this material into a little bit of a curve, a little bit like the withy, just so you've got the flip and the turn, and then it ends up, you know, I mean, if you've got a solar rig cone, put that over the steam, and it will stay exactly like that. And that's basically the finished rig. All we're going to do on that, just show you how we're going to put the bait on. I mean, you can use any sort of material to put the bait on, whether it's hair floss, dental floss, or braid. It doesn't really make a lot of difference. I'm going to pierce these pop-ups. I would normally put them on with dental floss, but they take a little bit longer. And if you're fishing short sessions, there's no need to go that far. So literally, we're going to take one of the Accelerate pop-ups. Simple as that, little overhand loop, and then tie it onto the little ring, and then that is the completed rig. As you can see, it's a little bit fingers and thumbs. If you're a little bit clumsy, it's probably a difficult rig for you to tie, but most of the time, once you've got your head round it, the hardest part is the silicone boom. But once you've done a few, and that's your finished rig. If we just take off the tag end, and that will sit absolutely perfect. A little blob of putty round the knot, and then that will sit absolutely perfect. And that's a pretty special carp rig. I don't think you're going to get a lot better hooker than this particular rig. So if you're into your rigs and you're into your, using the best products, then that rig will catch you a lot of fish. That is the silicone boom rig. Whatever you want to use this with, it will catch you a lot more fish than just fishing standard baits. Let's hope that one helps you.
So we're on to the main components of the rigs now, really. All the hook length materials. 12 months ago, when we did the Carp DVD, everything was in the development stage. Now they've been on the market for the last 12 months. I know you two have got your favourites.
Yeah, I think undoubtedly over the last year or so, it's apparent that people have gone absolutely chod rig mad and zig rig mad, and these two products, I mean, they're absolutely perfect. I mean, the Power Zig, as we said before, it's hollow in construction, so it floats very buoyant, ideal for like zig rigs and surface fishing, and it's a nice sort of sexy colour as well, isn't it? You know.
You had a right lump on that.
Yeah, I mean, the first time I ever used it, I got the biggest one in the lake, a 44-pounder, so that was quite pleasing. And a friend of mine who was fishing with, like it was a charity weekend, he had a personal best as well, a 34 pounds, so he was well chuffed as well. So we're both sold on the product as a result of that. But the Power Stiff, I mean, stiff rigs were the in thing for a number of years and still are. But like the latest vogue for chod rigs, I mean, this material is absolutely perfect for it. Coated braids have been around for what seems like an age now, but I mean, what I like about this one is ever so smooth, nice and smooth outer, and like a real nice supple inner.
Loads of anglers use coated braids. Yeah. Everybody has a spool in the tackle box. I quite like the fact that it's not shiny as well. Yeah. I can't get my head around a shiny hook link for some reason.
That's right.
It's nice that it's got that dull sort of finish to it.
Yeah, I think the main advantage with the coated braids, I mean, for people who don't know, is I mean, I actually detest tangles, you know. And if you want to use a £15 breaking straight Hooklink, if you use braid or something like that, tangles can be a problem. Whereas, like, you can use £15 in that, and whereas you can use £15 nylon Hooklink, and it's too stiff. Whereas, like, £15 is there, it's nice and supple, and you've got the breaking strain, and that's the main advantage. I'm confident I can cast it out there, and it's it's not tangled.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with you, because I'm absolutely, that's why I use fluorocarbon a lot. Paranoid about a tangle.
Yeah.
I think I've almost got OCD. If I put 3 rods down, I think, oh, is that one? I'll reel it in middle of the night.
Yeah,
I'm completely fruitcake about it, and and braids are, that's why we've got coated braids, and but braids still do have a place in carp angling.
Oh yeah.
If you're using particular rigs, like the flip and turn rigs, like the withy rig, and I know when this was in the infancy when we made the last DVD, the Para Carp, and I used this and landed that. I had a 51 common on it. Absolutely, it's a sinking braid, ultra thin, and it, for mechanical rigs that do the flip and turn, you want them to coil round and have a little bit of element of travel. Then a braid is the way forward. But what Ultima don't sort of sit on their laurels and think we've got the ultimate braid here, because we're working on a new one, and this will be out. By the time you guys see this DVD, I don't know if you can see how heavy that is. It's a braid, but in a really heavy variety, heavier than anything else. There is no competitor with a braid that heavy. We're working on a few. I've been testing this, and we're working on a few issues just on thickness, because if you want to use a small hook to get the amount of weight into that particular hook link, it ends up a little bit thicker than a normal hook link. It doesn't seem to have made a difference, because I think if you've got a hook link that's laying completely flat on the floor, it doesn't seem to make a difference with the carp. But the only issue we had was putting it through tiny hooks, getting it through twice, just on the thickness. So we're working on this one. This will be, I will use this an awful lot, because I've used it and cast it, because it's the thickness, the thickness and the heaviness of it. It doesn't tend to tangle. It doesn't tend to tangle. So we're aiming towards the ultimate hook link. The other way of doing it, I know Lee and lots of people love those coated ones. We've got the Hyperlink Pro. That is slightly different. It's a braid, but with the fluorocarbon inside. And this one, you can pull the fluorocarbon out halfway through, snip it off, and you've got a hinged rig with no knots. Yeah. Absolutely, it's one of my favourites. And you don't have to steam it yet again. Yeah. It's got fluorocarbon in it. Run it along, a little tiny bit of heat along, and it ends up nice and stiff, nice and straight. And because it's got the fluorocarbon, it will sink down. Like a stone. So you can create many different rigs. Probably, the most technical rigs are combi stiff rigs. Yeah. Carp just can't get their heads around them. You've got an element of hinged combined with the stiff, so they can't blow it out, the anti-eject. And they seem to be, the ultimate rigs, and that's why we brought that one into the range. But we will be, we're working on different hook links. We're looking at new materials, revolutionary materials, but that's for another show.
Yeah.
Okay, this rig is one that I've called the boa rig. It's utilising the power core. It's actually lead-free. We're going to chop off 10 inches of lead core, and we're going to take out the whole length of the lead-free wire. So basically all we've got is a nice spliceable braid. And what we're going to do first, we're going to splice on a little tiny ring swivel. Can be a little bit fiddly splicing, needs a little bit of practice. You're trying to get the point of the blunt end of the needle through the core of the lead core, as we've done there. And as you can see, I've got it behind the gate there, and it's a very effective way of fishing without any knots, and it never slips. And all we're going to do is put the tag end through the swivel. If it doesn't splay out, so I'm using a micro ring swivel here. So it can be a little bit fiddly, as you'll find out. You end up with a little loop, like so, and you've grabbed the tag end, like the frayed end of the power core, and you're going to pull it through like so. And you see that? That's as simple as that. And that gives you a really strong, non-slip, knotless way of attaching a braid. So it's very, very clever. If you've never used lead core, that's the easy way of doing it. You can pull it out, cut that bit off, it will never slip through. While it's under pressure, you've got the outside pulling on the inside. So basically, that's the actual hook end done. So whatever you want to tie onto this part, you can use all sorts of different rigs. So what we're going to do now is splice on the other end, which we're going to put the ring swivel, which is going to go into your lead clip. So we're going to splice that on. If we cut that down a little bit, it's a bit too long, go the opposite way up towards the tag end from the micro ring swivel, thread it through, again get the gate open like so. It's a lot easier on this one because we're putting it onto a bigger ring, and that'll just go through. Make your little loop and then close the gate like so again, and then pull that through. Ease it through and then pull it down. And then we've got two spliced ends, no knots. Cut off the tag end. So basically what you've got is probably, I would say, about 9 inches, 8 inches of you know, lead-free power core. So what we're going to do now, this is the part that makes it into why I called it the boa rig. I'm going to actually splice in to about halfway, just over halfway down, some number 3 pole elastic. So cut off a decent length. We're going to take the splicing needle, go from, you want it up close to where the splicing's finished up there. You want it very close to that, from the swivel end, from the lead end. And we're going to splice in now. We're going to get the needle to splice through. Like I say, this can be fiddly, especially when you're doing it to camera. And just thread up, just gently. Don't sort of push it too. If you push it too hard, you'll end up coming out of the side of the lead core. And then just before we get to the spliced part, we're going to take that out of there. You've got both ends nearly spliced to the lead core. You're putting the needle through the ends that are spliced. Okay, so what you do now, take your pole elastic and then pull it through. Gently pulling it through, no need to rush it. And then we've got one end out, and as you can see there, that's spliced through your Hooklink material. And all you need to do on here, one end, a small granny knot, and they pull down really tight, the granny knots on here. So you do 3 of those, 3 little granny knots. Like so. And because that pulls, you know, because it's elastic, it pulls in nice and tight, and then you chop it off. Okay, so what we're doing now is we're going to coil up. This is what gave me the idea of calling it the boa rig, because we're going to just coil that little bit up, just so it's constricted. And you've got the elastic in there. Cut off the tag, and then go round and do your 3 knots again. So we've got 1, very easy to work with, pole elastic, 2, 3. Take off your tag end. Basically, you've got an elasticated rig. So if you're fishing, you know, you like your rainbows and, you know, where you need a really strong Hooklink material, one that won't let you down, but also gives you the added advantage of the stretch. You've only got to move it a few mil and the hook's already into the fleshy part, taking hold. They won't know what to do with that. and that's the boa rig. And literally, on this end, you can put on whatever rig you want, whether you want a chod rig. I mean, just for show, I'll show you just a little combi rig. This is just used in fluorocarbon, so if you're worried about that was sharp. If you're worried about the lead core sort of being a bit alarming amongst the bottom, you'd be very surprised how well it blends in. But this is just literally, you can have a pop-up, a bottom bait rig, whatever you want. I mean, it's all about the capsule of the lead core doing the elasticated principle that's fixed on there. And as you can see, that's just taking hold, and whatever way they pull that from, they're going to get an element of stretch, but you've got a mighty strong hook link to land your fish. And you might want to use braid on there. You can use whatever you want, and that is the boa rig. It's once you've tied a few and you know how to splice, it's quite easy. I first used this on Frimley Pit 3, and I had 2 30s and an upper 20 on an overnight session using this, proving to me that it's one of them. It did work really, really well, and it does work really, really well. So if you incorporate something like that, if you go into your big snaggy waters and you need to land the fish, that type of rig will help you. It will help you do that. Okay, next rig. Utilising the Power Stiff in 22. Unbelievable material. The stiff rig's been around, the Hinge stiff rig's been around for a long time. I think it's probably made famous by Terry Hearn, but it's one that doesn't get used that much nowadays. So what we're going to do is just show you how to construct it using the Power Stiff. And you can use, the beauty of the Power Stiff is it's thinner than most of the stiff materials on the market. So you can actually use a smaller hook. I think that's a size 8. Basically what we're going to do, just poke through the back of the eye a tag end. You can see the tag end, that's going to form the D-rig. We're literally just going to start winding round the hook shank. I normally do about 7 turns. I don't think it's that critical. And then take it back through the eye. So literally, you've ended up with a knotless knot at the moment. Take your tiny little hook ring and put it on the tag end. Simple as that. Take the tag end and put it through, and you'll see how easy this Power Stiff is to get through the eye of the hook, because quite often they're quite difficult to do. So all you're forming is a little tiny D. Fold the actual hook link out the way, because we're going to chop this down just about where my fingers, top of my fingers, and then blob the bottom part to stop the D-rig coming undone. As you can see, just going to blob it as it's setting. Just push your finger onto the blob, just so we've created, and it will stop the D-ring coming out. And that's the main part of the rig done already. Depending on how high you want, a lot of people fish this about 2 inches high. I don't like pop-ups that high, but they work. But personally, I want it probably about an inch and a half, quite a short sort of pop-up. So I'm putting an overhand loop in the knot I've shown in a few of the other rigs actually, and then we're going to put on the little baby ring swivel, and you're going to put the hook link through the actual ring part, not the actual swivel, but the ring part of the ring swivel. And then we take the tag end, poke it through, and because of the Power Stiff, you're going to pull the little knot down, just so you've got a little tiny loop just to actually poke the tag end back through, and then pull it up quite close to the ring swivel. As you can see, there's not much of a gap there, and that's going to form the tiny little loop we want. Take the Power Stiff, round twice, and then back through the little loop. It's as simple as that. And then pull it down nice and securely. And if you want to make the loop a nice a nice little loop, you can either do it with a pen, or yeah, again I use the baiting needle, put it over there, and then pull this part nice and secure. So you end up with a nice tight knot. Trim off your tag end. And there's no need to blob that, because that knot is very, very secure. And as you can see, you've got a lovely, lovely little loop. It's not all twisted. It's a perfect loop for that, and it just gives the rig, once it's on the bottom, flexibility. Whichever angle the fish sucks the bait from, that will turn. So, and that's the idea of having these little links here. So you've got a link there and a link there, and it just gives it the flexibility, the movement that you'll need for this particular rig. You know, I mean, that is basically just the chod rig. So you can either use it as a chod rig, or you can tie these up when you get to the lake. If you've got a load of those tied up, that's the most complicated part. The other part is the actual length of the hook link. There's no need to have a loop on this part, because you've got all the flexibility in the actual ring there. Because of the strength of this material, it's just 3 turn blood knot. That's it. That's all you need. Just pull it down slowly, because if you pull it down fast, you will damage the material. You know, it's really strong stuff, but it's not, you know, it's not invincible, and you will put marks in it. So you just pull it down slowly, then really tighten it off. Cut off the tag end again. That's going to form part of the hook link. As you can see, the rig's almost done. Takes very little time to do. You've probably got a bit too much material there. You've got the ring swivel part there. It's not that important to have a loop this end. You can put a loop in, but you don't need it, because you've got the ring part there. 3 times round. Wet it down. Pull it down just slowly, rather than just, and then pull it secure. And that basically is the Hinge stiff rig. And all we're going to do is put a bait on there. You put a nice pop-up on there. It's not a bottom bait rig, it is a pop-up. So we're going to secure down with the bait floss a pop-up. You do 2 loops, one behind each other, and then just back through twice. Through there twice, pull the knot down, and then we've got a sliding loop knot. All you do, take your boilie, and then just gently ease the loop down over the boilie, so it's in the centre of the boilie, going around all around the centre. It's quite a small little pop-up, this one, but you can use it with, you know, you can use this rig with plastic corn, pop-up plastic corn, pop-up maize, or pop-ups that, you know, the bait you're using. Take off the tag end, blob it down a little bit, and then you're ready to tie on. But before we tie that on, what I generally do with this rig is put it through the steaming process, and I'll do that before we put the bait on, and we'll show you how. Okay, right, well basically that's the finished rig. All we're going to go put it through now is the steaming process. Be careful, I mean, that's why I'm using 2 baiting needles. Over steam, obvious reasons, you're going to burn yourself. So we're going to actually just steam the main part, just so you end up with a lovely stiff kick-out section that's going to kick away from the lead, and then just hold it there, nice and tight. You notice I've still got tension on that, just so you get a perfectly straight hook link. That should be dry enough now. You can see how straight that is, and how, you know, I can pick that up. That's as stiff as you're going to get. And that's why the Power Stiff is so good. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. This part is going to be using the rig cone again, because what we're going to do is create, like a wivvy style, just a gentle curve in it. If you'll notice, I'm going to put this one further up the rig cone than I did the last rig. And then, as you can see from that, and all we're going to do is hold that over the steam. Don't pull the loop too hard, because we want that to still remain as a loop. And once that's dried out, we'll leave that to set, just for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, whatever you like. But as long as it sets, we've got a nice little gentle curve, as you can see. That's basically as it's going to sit in the water once we put the bait on. I'm going to tie that onto the little ring of the D. It's not too fiddly once you've done a few. It's like anything, you know, if you're starting out carp angling, these are the rigs that the main guys use to catch these big fish. So it's worth, you know, up in your game, learning to tie a few of the complicated rigs, and you will outwit the big carp. Yet again, just a little tiny blob on the. Be careful not to affect the power stiff or get the flame on the power stiff. The only thing to put on that, because it's a pop-up, a little bit of putty. You can mould the putty round the knot that's going down on the upright part of the rig. So a little tiny piece of putty. You'll find that the swivel helps keep the bait down anyway, keeps the rig down. Mould it round the knot, and that is ready to cast out. And that will catch you an awful lot of big fish, and that's how it will sit in the water. But you notice how that rig will turn 360? Because we've done the loop with the ring swivel, whatever way the carp touches, because we've put the withy style sort of bend in it, it will always flip round in the bottom lip, and then you can see how stiff the power stiff is. There's no way that fish is going to deal with that. They won't be able to eject it. It'll catch an awful lot of fish. Like I say, it's nothing new. It's been around for quite a while, and there's quite a few rigs that are formulated around that, like the chod rig. I'd rather use this rig that has got that element of travel rather than a chod that is stuck onto. You know, there's no question the chod works, but I just think this one for me is more my style of rig, and it'll catch an awful lot of carp. Hope that one helps.
So fluorocarbons then, guys, vital part of the carp angler's armoury nowadays. Very, very popular, in vogue if you want to call it, but...
Yeah, I'd say so, Pete. You know, there's certainly, you know, latter part of autumn into winter, the lakes are clearing up. You want to be as invisible as an angler as you can be, especially when the fish are slowing down. Fluorocarbon gives you that edge. It sinks down, you're not over massive weed beds, you know, everything's flat on the bottom, so, you know, the fish quite often circle around looking for lines. You've got a tight line going to your lead. A fluorocarbon, you can ease it off, it will sink down. The beauty with the Pure Power is that we've actually designed a fluorocarbon that is as soft as any mono, and it will cast as far as most monos. I mean, the first time out on this particular thing, I used 16 pound. It's quite ironic, really. We're actually sat in the swim, the very same swim I caught the Isle of Wight record, and I had it on all three rods. And on this particular lake, I had 3 upper 20s, 3 30s, and the 48.5, which was, you know, some kind of test for me on a line. Yeah, I was pretty pleased with that, and it was remarkable. It probably wasn't the right lake to have it on because how far that will cast, but I was using it in a different scenario. I was sinking it off. I was almost backleading, but I still had, within sort of the fish moving off 2 foot, indication. Yeah. And that was vital, and I think that was key. And all those fish, bar one, came in the daytime.
Visual part of angling really comes into play.
Well, you know, I know that the owner of this particular lake said that they're really spooked out if they hear human beings, hear the footsteps, I don't think they knew we were here. Well, I was here. You know, once I was cast in, let it all sort of sink down to the bottom, and it did exactly what it was supposed to. And there's a sort of a gravel bar over there, and it was, you know, all the fish were fighting over the top of it, up against the reeds, and I didn't have any troubles whatsoever. Performed amicably, and it landed me an Isle of Wight record.
Yeah, I think the main advantage is, I mean, fluorocarbon by its nature, nothing affects it, does it? You know, so, you know, a lot of mates of fluorocarbon. It's wiry when you put it on your reel, and it's wiry 6 months later. You know, you know, because of the softening process, it's, you know, it's really nice to use all, you know, straight away, isn't it? You know,
it feels just like a mono.
Yeah. I mean, you know, the nice part of being a consultant with Ultima is that they actually listen. We listen to the public, we listen to what people want, we know hopefully what people want, and we're looking for it for ourselves, and they tend to incorporate that into a product. So not only is it in white. It doesn't just come in white, a clear finish. We've done it in the green as well because some people prefer that colour. I don't know of another fluorocarbon.
There's not, I don't think.
So there you go. So we were the first people to actually incorporate a dye into fluorocarbon, and you know most lake beds have an element of green, brown, and that once that's lead on the bottom, the fish don't know it's there. It's just an awesome line, like the Hooklinks. I mean, obviously, I make most of my fishing, I'd say, is done with fluorocarbon Hooklinks. I use the Power Link in 15 and 18. Incorporated with that, I don't even use a leader, so it's straight to the lead, and you know, in the thicker variety, I have no problems with flicking scales off, or people talk about that. I haven't ever had a problem with that. Just literally a lead clip. When you put that in the water, all you can see is the lead.
Do you find knots? You know, you have to use different knots, or is
I use the twice through the eye 5-turn grinner.
Right, okay.
And it's the same as you would do with a normal braid.
Yeah.
I haven't had any problems.
No.
I used to. I'm not, you know, sounding like an Ultima flagship here, but other manufacturers that I've used in the past, I've had problems with, like, it snapping.
Yeah.
Polymers going. Some of it was to do with the hooks we used to start with. You know, if you don't use an out-turned eye, that took me about a year and a half to work that out. But you know, I haven't had any problems at all with notch strength. So, you know, no, you know, but I do use it in the 15 and the 18, and the 18 is still supple enough to use it as a.
Well, I know you've said to me before it's almost braid-like.
Yeah,
the way it operates.
I mean, that's
with the basic.
That's 15. It's really floppy, which is unusual for fluorocarbon. Fluorocarbons of past, they'll snap. Yeah. But this stuff just doesn't snap. You know, it's a really good fluorocarbon. I don't ever see fluorocarbon disappearing from the carp world. I see it getting stronger and stronger.
Well, the other thing with Pure Power is the fact that the softening process has made it into a much more castable line as well. So, I mean, through testing, Mark Hutchinson, one of our consultants, has cast over 170 yards with a baited rig.
That's the 16-pound.
16-pound fluorocarbon, which is unbelievable.
Well, we're not saying you're going to cast that far because no one probably will. But that's with a fluorocarbon. That was 16-pound, straight through. No leaders. That was bang straight through. So you know, if you take the average angler, he's going to be able to cast sort of ton 20, ton 10. With a fluorocarbon and fish happily and confident. That's what fluorocarbon will do for you. It'll just give you that extra key factor in confidence, you know.
I think the other aspect it gives you is that you do tend to fish slack lines at shorter distances. And if you see a fish roll or you see a fish top out and you want to punch a lead at it, which has been resulted in many, many big fish being caught, if you've got the fluorocarbons of old, you wouldn't be able to reach. Whereas with this,
well, you get the old frapping around the rod, and you know, I have used them and you know, steered away from them till, you know, obviously then Power Carp come out, fluorocarbon coated, a line that casts, could sink. But this stuff will actually sink like a brick. So you can use it as a hook link as well, which I've done in the 16 variety. Used it with the basic complicated rig, and it works. It's brilliant, you know. But obviously, be choosy when you're choosing your fluorocarbon. Choose the right strain. It's not cheap, but it does a job that, you know, especially in the, like you say, through autumn and winter, it'll help you catch more fish.
Definitely.
This is the Wivy pool rig. This is probably what made me as synonymous in carp angling as I am. Come up with this rig. Well, I mean, I initially was using the bent hook rig back in the late 80s, probably 87. It was Mr. Pete Wilson of Ultima who actually showed me the bent hook riggers when I was about 17. Started using it, catching a lot of fish. It did a lot of fish damage. As a syndicate, we voted it out. It just wasn't a considerate carp rig. It caught a lot of fish, but it was damaging fish. So for 2 years, there's a bit of a lull in Wivy. Because it was, you know, it was such a devastating rig. I started messing around, and I've always been into rigs, messing around with different variants. Initially, I came up with the ring slid all the way round there. We didn't have shrink tube in those days, and I was literally fixing up a float stop and doing a round circle of soft tubing, and it was sliding up round there. It was catching, but it was catching in various places, and I had a couple that were outside the mouth. So something had to be, you know, it had to be changed. I knew it was on the same principle as the bent hook, and it was obviously, you can see that, it's a nice bend in the hook. This is where people get confused with the Wivy. It bends out straight. So it's, once it's hooked, it's done its job. If you, playing a fish and it gets in the weed, that, just because of the shape of the tubing, it actually grips the bottom lip. So if you do slacken off to it, whatever, it's one of those rigs that tends to stay in the fish's mouth more than just a hook on its own. It's great for European angling, absolutely pucker for all you guys fishing these big pits with the big fish, because it creates a big hook. You can close that up a little bit. I've seen people use longer lengths of tubing and make them flatter, so it lays along the bottom, and literally just they're using it with a stiff rig. So it's still the Wivy pool rig. But in a different form, just a lot more tubing and a lot flatter along the bottom. But this is how I use it. I always use it with a pop-up primarily. 1988 was when it was conceived, and I suppose I've got to be quite flattered that it's still used today as one of the most well-known pop-up rigs. I'm using it with the braid from Ultima. That's how I'd always use it, normally with a braid. You can use it, like with the Fluorocarbon, you can have a semi-stiff rig, but just whip on the braid onto that. But I tend to use it braid only. I always use it at 7 inches. That's the best. I did a lot of testing in the late 80s, early 90s, and I found the 7 inches was the ultimate, for fishing for fish for 25 plus to 30. That seemed to be the ultimate flip and turn, a little bit of movement on it. And I was using it with a helicopter rig. And as I say, using it with the Ultima braid, and I will show you just quickly how we tie this. So a lot of people are confused with how this rig, they look at it and they think, oh God, it's too confusing. Obviously, you've seen how to tie on a 4-turn, 5-turn grinner knot. Literally, I'm just using it straight onto the hook. I'm using the GLT hooks, the penetrators, because that was one of the original hooks. It was out in those days that I used with this rig. Literally, thread on 1 inch of the tubing. Slide it down and put probably 5mm over the eye of the hook. And it secures on there nice and tight. What I find with some of the stiffer shrink tubes is that once you've put this on the Wivy rig, it moves about even after you've steamed it. This stuff is quite tight and it shrinks to half the size. So literally that's the start of the Wivy rig. And the next thing I do is the steaming, and this is probably the bit that most people get wrong. Whilst we're waiting for the kettle to boil, I'll move on, and it's quite important, it's vital that you use it with an oval ring, because of the way the bait sits. If you use a round ring and you tie it on, the bait, it makes the hook sit at a slight angle. It's not what you want. You want it to, I'll show you in a sec how you want the hook to sit. We're just using a little tiny float stop, or whatever stop you can get your hands on, but sometimes, it pays to glue this round. A lot of people fish it up near the top. I've never found it works better just on the edge of the bend. As it starts to bend, you've got an element of travel. You don't want it too far up, because what I've found is, depending on what hook you use, and if you hook the fish and your float stop's up there, the hook won't penetrate into the mouth, so you're playing the whole fish, you're playing on the bend of the hook, and I've had them snap where that has slid round. So that is a key element to how the rig works. You need it further around there, and as you can see from that particular setup, you can see where it is. The hook then can drop. It's just perfect. And if I can show you that way, the way the hook sits, this is in conjunction with using it with an oval ring. I slide the knot over, slightly over to one side, and that makes the ring sit perpendicular to the hook, and that's quite critical. It's very critical, because with a round ring, it sits like that. It's not a good presentation. That's exactly how you want to tie it. Just slide in the knot over. It's literally, you've got your power braid straight to the hook, 1 inch of tubing, a ring and a stop. It's very, very simple. Always when you're putting over steam, especially young kids, if you're going to be steaming up links like this, always try and use some pliers. Don't put your hands anywhere near the steam. So what we'll do, just hold it straight, heat up the shrink tube, and literally just bend it round till I know that's the angle that I want. It's literally just a nice curved C, and that is the Wivy rig. All you've got to do, tie your pop-up on, put your split shot on to balance it. I tend to use it as a critically balanced bait. You can use it as a bottom bait, it still works. A lot of people have asked me that, and when it got hard at Wivy after they'd been caned for about 4 years, started using it with a bottom bait, and it caught me as many fish. So that's it. That's the Wivvy pool rig. And as I say, whether it's in England, whether it's abroad, carp are doing you all the time, and they are, no question about it. You know, like I say, going back to that Hermit lead, it outfished this rig at once, but there's not many other rigs that I know that this will get outfished on. This is the one. If you're fishing a pop-up rig, it's probably the ultimate. So, you know, that's as far as the Wivvy pool rig goes. That's how I use it. That's how it was concepted in 1988, and it's still going to this day as one of the world's most famous pop-up rigs. Try it. You'll find it's good. Okay, a rig I'd like to demonstrate on how to tie. It's a rig that I've used for probably the last 8 years, maybe 7, since the advent of fluorocarbon. I'm going to be doing it with the Power Link, which is made in-house by Ultima. They've softened it. It's the next level on. It's ideal for a Hooklink. I like the bait to curl round, have a little element of travel, and to do it with fluorocarbon is fantastic, and this product offers you that facility. I'll show you what I normally do. I normally take off about 14 inches because we're doing turns around the hook. The hook link gets shorter and shorter. We're going to tie a simple overhand knot. That is just literally to secure the buoy in place. As you can see, just from that is a simple overhand loop, and we're going to cut off the tag end and secure the buoy on. So we're just going to put the buoy through, secure it with a buoy stop. The only hook I use now with any type of fluorocarbon is the stiff riggers, the ESP stiff riggers. Corda do the choddy, you know, anything with an outturned eye. But on this particular rig, because of the way the eye is angled for the chod rigs, try and straighten it back a bit. It's still got a slightly outturned eye, but too much and the hook doesn't sit. You'll see this is all about the way the hook sits aggressively towards the, you know, in conjunction with the buoy. So the first thing you do is take the Power Link, poke it through the back of the eye, and then slide the hook down into position. And what I normally do is I just push it down so it just passes the top of the buoy. And that's quite critical. You don't want it too close because there's no travel on the hair. The hair still, because this material is quite soft, the hair actually, I love the way the hair separates once the carp takes it in. So what we're doing is doing 3 turns around the top of the hook, and then just by that I'm letting the buoy go, and then I'm taking the rest of the turns around the other side of the hair, and then I normally do about 6 turns and then back through. This is quite critical, not back through the, you know, the face of the eye, but through the back of the eye again. And then that is literally the rig done. And as I said, you know, it's the type of rig, if you turn up and you haven't got a rig tied, I've called it, you know, years and years ago, I called it the basic complicated rig, because it is very, very basic to make, but it's complicated in the way that the hook sits. And once we've done that, we bend the eye out, and if you can see how aggressively that hook sits, I've caught over 100 English 30s on this rig alone. You know, so I know it works for big fish. I've caught a lot of other fish on it, but it's a big fish rig. It can't get any simpler than that. But just the way that the hook sits, it literally takes hold normally in the scissors. That's where you'll get your hook hold. Like I say, you know, a softer material, you can design a rig to hook straight bang in the centre of the bottom lip, but this isn't what it's about. Okay, yeah, I'll say a little trick you can do. Because you've tied this, you've gone fishing, you've tied this basically when you've arrived, you can either thread the bag with the pellets. If you're fishing in silkweed or, you know, sort of detritus bottom, you can literally thread on a little bag, pull the hook through. I would normally use the PVA that's a little bit more, this one is not perfect, but you can pull the hook through and you've got a, literally your hook is covered by the PVA bag, so you can cast that onto silkweed, any kind of, you know, sort of mucky area really that you don't want to cast a single hook bait out onto. And the fluorocarbon, it's perfect. It sinks to all the contours. You can see how supple that is. It will sink to any contours and disappear literally during the daytime, and it definitely upped my catch rate. Well, one of my favourite methods, and this is probably the one that's caught me more big fish than any other method to put on to the basic complicated rig, is literally, it's quite simple, a stringer of 5 boilies. If I was using a double boilie, I'd use seven baits, but this is how it works. I've called this one like the round stringer, and I used it back in the 80s when I was using these massive boilies, and I didn't know whether to put any spares out, so I was putting small baits around the big one. Literally, what we're doing, you take your hook bait, you're tying on your stringer straight onto the bottom of the hook. I normally secure it twice because, you know, PVA string can slip. You don't want that. And what we're doing now is we're just going to slide the knot up to the top of where we've knotted the fluorocarbon, and literally just take the bottom end. Because I've put the boilie on halfway through, it's got a little loop that we can loop the boilie onto, and we loop it through. Okay, so we've got a little round stringer, and then what we do is we push the boilie through the other side, so it's exactly dead centre of all the baits. Trim off the tag end, and that's the bit we're going to use to secure the hair down. This is just taking it a little level further. You don't want to cast that and that ends up over the top of that. You know, you've got a very poor presentation. So I always tie down with the tag end of the quick melt, so you're not using a massive amount of it, onto the shank of the hook. Literally, it's easier when it's on your rod. It's a bit more difficult to show now, but just one loop, just to hold it in place while you're casting it. You can cast this into silkweed, into weed, any way you want, flat bottom, and that will help you. It helps anti-tangle, and what it does is I always feather the rod down. Wherever I cast, I feather the rod down, no matter what, you know, what bottom it is. I feather it down so the rig is always going down and dropping. And where it's, you know, this is going to be about 10 inches long, it's generally going to curve, and I've done it in the edges and I've seen it work, and it generally curves, and it gives that rig a little element of travel. The movement of big fish is totally different than a small fish that's, you know, not upright in itself, moving along very quickly. Once that's in the water and the PVA is dissolved, it's very difficult to make out which one's a hook bait. So if it's difficult for a human to analyse in that process, it's going to be a hell of a difference for a carp. Generally, they just come in, snuffle the whole lot, find out he's hooked. You've got your aggressive hook, and that has caught me over 100 English 30s, and that proves that rig is a very big fish rig. It's probably all I've got to say on it. You know, it's a very, very good rig. Using it in conjunction with the power link, it'll catch you a lot of fish. Okay, right, well, the clever chaps at Ultima have produced, as far as I know, the first zig of floater fishing line, designated floater fishing line on the market. This stuff's very, very unique. It has a hollow core, so it will always float. When you're floater fishing, absolutely imperative that you don't have a sinking link. And this stuff will catch an awful lot of fish all the way over the world. Very, very unique product. I'll show you very, very quickly. It's, again, you've seen the basic complicated rig. Literally, you're tying on a little loop onto the end of the power zig. Trim off your tag end. I'll show you with one piece of corn just to make it quick. All we're doing, lassoing the bait on, as you can see from the 2 colours. I quite like using 2 colours. It's something different. Most people will probably use, you know, one colour. You could even put the corn on the other way, and that's probably how I would normally fish it. You take off your required length for your power zig, using a very small out-turned eye hook. In this case, it's a size 8. Through the back of the eye, take the power zig, and then pull it down towards your designated hook bait, whatever it will be. Have quite a short hair. Makes it a little bit tricky in tying, once you've got the hang of it, tying the actual basic complicated. But I go 4 turns on a zig, and then underneath 4 turns. This one's even closer, and this is probably how I would fish it rather than the longer hair. It's all fingers and thumbs when you're doing zig rig, but that is zig rig fishing. But there are days when it's the only method, and it's caught some of the largest carp in the country, in England at least. That's probably how I would fish it, very close to the hook bait like that. Just literally, carp takes hold of it, it's hooked, and that is the power zig line. Very, very unique product. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. Stays floating, it'll keep your hook bait floated, it'll catch you a lot of fish. Absolutely blinding product. Right, moving on with carp rigs and technology and the forethought that's gone into this particular rig. I come up with this rig probably, I'd say 6 years ago. After watching a lot of carp in the edges, how they get rid of rigs. I've called this one the Hermit lead. It's a very, very clever rig, and it's the ultimate. I can't think of anything better than this particular rig. Now, it's using the power shock leader, which is going to be, it's got a permanent home in my tackle box, this product, and you need this for the Hermit rig. I would normally have about 5 turns of this, so you're using an awful lot of it, 5 turns on the reel, so there's probably about 40 foot. But this is a shock leader with a difference, because this is fluorocarbon, it will sink down. You use this particular rig, because it's elasticated, and I'll show you in a minute how we're elasticating it, but primarily what you've got to get into your head is that this goes straight through to the swivel, protected by the bead, which is quite important. I'll use the first contact beads, but you need a tough rubber bead, not the hard plastic, but a tough rubber bead, because if you have a soft bead, once you cast out, the swivel can end up back through inside the bead, which affects the mechanics. But if you look at this, I'll put this on my hand just to demonstrate it. You've only got to move a few mil, and that's literally taking hold of my finger, and it starts to hurt after a while because it's pulling, the elasticity is pulling against, it's almost gravity, but it's not gravity, but it's all inside the lead, and hence why I called it the Hermit rig. But it will catch fish right the way through the winter. This is when I really use it. But like I say, the power shock leader is probably one of the key elements, and also the tail rubber. What we've got inside here, the little tag end, and I'll demonstrate this in a minute. If I pull this rig, you'll see through there that the pole elastic is whipped on, and if you notice how far back it is, it's probably about just under 3/4 of the way up the tubing. So there's very little amount of pole elastic to do that job. And what happens, once the fish is hooked, if you get a really clever fish that tries to pick that up, that picks up the lead on its axis. So it will always get the weight of the lead, whatever way it's moving. If it's moving sideways, and once he's had enough, the fish has decided he's not going to get rid of this particular rig, he's going to bolt, that pulls out of the tail rubber. So you're left with a little tag end. The fish is, you're literally then onto a running rig, and basically you can fish your bobbins on the floor. It's very critical, don't fish this tight to the lead because the elastic won't be able to stretch then. So that's the rig null and void. You need to let the power shock leader do its job, lay along the bottom, have the bobbin on the floor. Once that's run, you'll get a little tiny flicker on the bobbin, then whack, you're gone, you're into a running rig. So, but the key element to this is the pole elastic and the shock leader, which, it lays down flat, everything's out the way, you haven't got to worry about back leads, you don't want back leads on this. This is the whole point. You want your bobbins on the floor, nice slack, so you're not going to spook the fish. There's one mouthful to go at. You can still fish this over a bed of particle or boilie, and it will nail a lot of fish. And what I've incorporated, basically on the rig end, just a very open gaped rig with a tiny little kicker, little piece of tubing. I've been using the fang twisters on this particular rig because they do turn in very, very, very quick. They're ultra sharp. All you need is just literally the fish to move a millimetre of pressure away from the lead, and it will do its job. So what I'm incorporating here is a new prototype braid from Ultima. This has got the sinking element. It will lay flat. You can see how nicely it's cooled round. They've put in a fleck to break it up. Most bottoms, whatever you're fishing over, will have elements of black in it. It will do the job. This one will be out in the new year. It's certainly another product for my tackle box. So I'm going to put this rig on, and we're going to show you how we catch a carp on it. The key part to this, and the bit that I get asked the most, is the pole elastic and where it goes. Now you're literally going to do a 4-turn grinner knot, and holding a very small tag end at the bottom. It's just literally a slip knot, like you'd put on pole elastic on, if you're marking your line up or whatever. Just literally 4 turns, and then we're going to pull it nice and tight. It's a little bit difficult to work with pole elastic, but it will go into a knot. And then what we're going to do is slide it down. This is the hardest part that people don't understand, so I'm going to go slower on this part. We're tagging off the bottom, we're chopping off the tag end off the bottom. And if we can find the tail rubber, we're going to pull this through till we can just see it at the other end. and then trap the tail rubber on as not to pull that part back through. So what we need the knot about here, 3/4 of the way up the tubing. If you have it too close down here, when you pull it, the knot comes out and it can loop the leader. So you don't want that. The rig, once that happens, the rig won't work. So you need it literally further up here. So I'm going to slide this down, get hold of the power shock leader, slide it down, work it out finger-wise. That's perfect. And now we're just going to tighten that up really tight so it doesn't slip. Trim off the little tiny tag end almost to, you know, so it's so close so it doesn't get caught up in the tubing system, and then pull it up. You can now take the tail rubber off and adjust your tension. So if we test the tension there, we can see it's working perfectly. Absolutely perfect. That you can see just, I'm sorry if that's a bit quick, but that's how fast a carp can shake its head and he's gone on a normal rig. You know, you can throw your lead, and that's the idea of this particular rig. So we'll just put down we'll put down the tail rubber, on it goes, chop off the tag end, and you have yourself probably what I'd consider, I've been into rigs for like nearly 30 years of carp angling. This has been the side that I've always been into. It's probably what I'd consider the ultimate carp rig.
So we're here with Will, owner of Combley Lakes. Beautiful carp fishery, here with the Ultima team doing a bit of filming. I understand also, Will, that you're the owner of the Isle of Wight Carp Company.
Yeah, that's correct, Pete. Yeah, we've been rearing carp for a few years now on the various rearing ponds we've got. We've just had 4 across the way and we're expanding. The objective was to start trying to produce some fast-growing scaly fish because we were finding them hard to obtain in the market at the time. So we started to breed fish from known 40s that have got there in under 10 pounds, sort of plainer fish. We've started to put very sort of heavily scaled males with these females and spawning. We've got some nice leanies coming onto the farm soon.
So I understand also you've got the Isle of Wight record here at the fishery.
Yes,
Steve was...
Marlene at 48 pound 8. We're very pleased to get that this spring. It's nice to take the record. And we also spawn her as well, so we've got some of her offspring available for sale. So yeah. We've now got fish to 20 pound, and we've got C1s, C2s, 3Cs, C4s and C5s, the C being the season, you know, C1's 1 year old basically. We've got some nice, you know, nice scaly fish. We've got linears, zip linears, fully scales. We've got some plainer fish that tend to grow slightly quicker. We like to give them a healthy diet. We give them like maize, barley, wheat, soya and coarse pellet. We tend to try and stick away from trout pellet. It's the high oil content. We think it makes the fish fatty and slightly unhealthy. We know there's no chemicals, the fish are more stress-free and they tend to get better growth rates. And in this pond we'd maybe put 100, 120 C3s going in at about 6 pound in weight possibly, something like that.
What would you expect to take them out at or harvest them out at?
Well, hopefully we'd harvest them out C4s in the winter. I mean, we'd like them to average somewhere between 12 and 14 pounds if we can, you know, that'd be the target.
Well, they're stunning fish, Will. What sort of weight's that one, about 17?
Yeah, I'd put it about somewhere between 16 and 18, mate, something like that I'd have thought.
Yeah, it's lovely fish. You can see they're in absolutely stunning condition, mate. They really are.
Yeah, so unfortunately today we haven't managed to get one of our very scaly ones to show you. There's still a nice fish with decent conformation, nice bit of length to it.
Yeah,
a few scales. You can see the starbursting scales. We've got a few on there. I'll actually show you the other side. See a few of those scales.
Certainly looks like it's going to be a grower, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it'd be a good fish for the future, mate, definitely.
I'll see you when you're 40 pound.
Yeah. Well, there'll be 5 next spring more, because I mean, it's a C5, so it's only 4.5 for the date. I mean, next April it'll be 5 years old.
It's got a good thick back. I mean,
yeah.
You know. So, Will, these are the 40 pounders of the future. These are 1 year old fish?
C1s. They're probably, you know, they were spawned sort of late this April, so this year, so not yet a year old, but.
Okay, so can we have a look at a few? Because little baby carp fascinate me, you know, especially when you get the scale patterns.
Yeah, well, you'll get to see some more of our scaly ones now, mate. Yeah. If we dip our hands in, just carefully try and feather a few to the top. Start to see some of the linears we have and more heavily scaled fish.
Yeah.
One of our bigger plainer ones. The bigger ones do tend to grow quite faster.
Look at that.
You see a beautiful little fully scaled there.
Wow, look at that.
We've got some nice big apple slice scales as well.
Fantastic.
So it's nice to have sort of across the board, you know, to get some plain fast-growing ones and some pretty fast-growing ones as well. But the plainer ones do seem to be the ones that really go there, you know. But it's trying to get something of everything, so, you know, every fishery would like to have a variation of different-looking fish, basically.
Yeah, no, beautiful. I think I'd like to take him home. He's beautiful.
It'd be lovely when
that.
that fish gets to sort of 30 plus. It'd be a sought-after fish, wouldn't it?
Yeah, without a doubt. Fantastic. Well, I look forward to seeing them when they're on my unhooking mat a bit bigger.
Yeah, this time next year, hopefully they'll be able to do a pound and a half. And
4 or 5 years' time, proper big ones.
yeah, hopefully some of them will be pushing through 20 pound by then.
Fantastic.
We hope that this film has given you some useful information on how to improve your catches, utilising the benefits of the latest innovative thinking on rig design from one of the UK's most respected anglers. Ultima's dedication to innovation and development is well known, and it's this commitment that has helped to make them recognised around the world as being at the very forefront of line performance and technology. Ultima believe in giving anglers as much knowledge as they can, so there's much more in-depth information on all the rigs covered on this DVD on the Ultima website, plus a huge amount of additional information useful to all anglers, including comprehensive knot and line care sections, together with a search facility to find your nearest Ultima stockist. You will have noticed that throughout the film the guys have been wearing some of the items from the great range of Ultima clothing. These high-quality items are now available to purchase directly from Ultima's online merchandise store, and with a very special promotional offer for people who have watched this film. Go to the merchandise section of the online store, enter the promotion code PC2311 in the promotional code box, and you will get very special prices, plus a free bonus item.
Right, okay. DVD sadly is coming to an end. Really enjoyed, you know, being involved in the DVD and having you know, such an input on the rig side. Hopefully, you guys, you know, no matter what level of carp angling you're at, will glean some information. There's rigs for beginners, there's rigs for intermediate, there's rigs for hardcore carp anglers, showing you how to incorporate the products using the right sort of length hook link and the right hooks, and you know, generally, like I say, it's rigs are, it's a funny subject, rigs. It's something that everybody's interested in. Whenever I do a show or, you know, that sort of thing, that is the topic of conversation, and that's why we've put this DVD together. So hopefully in a format that you can follow and incorporate into your angling. Hopefully making your photo albums a lot bigger than they were and catching PBs. I'm certainly enjoying myself at Ultima, and I hope you enjoyed the DVD, and I'll see you on the next one, hopefully.